Imagine a blade so small it could be hidden in a sleeve, yet powerful enough to topple emperors and reshape entire civilizations. A weapon that whispers when swords shout, that strikes in silence while armies clash in thunder. This is the paradox of the dagger, history's most underestimated assassin. But the world of ancient weaponry holds far more than the swords and spears we see in movies. Daggers with curves so precise they could slip between ribs without touching bone. Blades so deadly that their very names were carved into history as warnings. Some were dipped in poisons that had no antidote. Others were crafted from metals we still don't fully understand. Today, we'll uncover 5 of the most lethal daggers ever wielded, each one more deadly than the last. And the first one? It was forged in a land where even the gods feared its edge. Dagger 1. The Tutankhamun Meteorite Dagger. In 1925, archaeologists broke the seal on King Tutankhamun's tomb. Inside, among mountains of gold and treasures beyond imagination, they found something that shouldn't exist. A dagger with a blade that gleamed with an otherworldly sheen. Golden handle, yes, but the blade itself was wrong. Too perfect. Too advanced. For nearly a century, this dagger haunted historians. The ancient Egyptians were master metalworkers, but this blade was different. It showed no signs of rust, no corrosion. After 3,300 years in a tomb, it looked like it had been forged yesterday. Here's what they discovered. The blade wasn't from Earth. In 2016, scientists finally proved it. The dagger was forged from a meteorite. Iron from space, fallen from the heavens in a ball of cosmic fire, then hammered by Egyptian smiths into a weapon fit for a god king. But here's where it gets darker. Why would ancient Egyptians use space metal for a dagger? They had plenty of iron. The answer lies in their religion. They believed meteorites were gifts from the sky gods, physical proof that the heavens were watching. This wasn't just a weapon. It was a divine execution tool, meant to kill with the authority of the cosmos itself. The blade's edge was ground to a sharpness that modern analysis shows could pierce through leather armor like cloth. But the Egyptians never used it in battle. It was found placed directly over Tutankhamun's thigh, positioned for the afterlife. Historians now believe this dagger was meant to protect the pharaoh's soul in the underworld, to fight demons and ancient evils that waited beyond death. Every enemy of Egypt knew, if you killed a pharaoh, his meteorite blade would hunt you in the next life. But as deadly as this cosmic blade was, it pales in comparison to the weapon that brought down the most powerful man in ancient Rome. Dagger 2, the dagger of Brutus, the blade that killed Caesar, 5 to 930. March 15th, 44 BC. Julius Caesar, conqueror of Gaul, master of Rome, a man who had survived countless battlefields, walks into the Senate. He's been warned. Soothsayers told him to beware the Ides of March. His wife had nightmares of his murder. But Caesar goes anyway. What happens next takes 60 seconds. 23 stab wounds. A pool of blood on the Senate floor. And one dagger, wielded by his closest friend, that strikes the killing blow. But here's the shocking truth historians discovered. Caesar didn't die from the first 22 wounds. Forensic analysis of ancient accounts reveals that most of the senators were terrible with blades. They panicked, stabbed wildly, hit non-lethal areas. Caesar was fighting back, using his stylus as a weapon, his toga as a shield. Then Brutus stepped forward. The dagger Brutus used wasn't Roman. Recent archaeological evidence suggests it was a Greek parazonium, a short, leaf-shaped blade specifically designed for one purpose, execution. It had a reinforced tip that could punch through bone. The blade was slightly curved, designed to slip between ribs and find the heart. When Caesar saw Brutus approaching with the blade, ancient texts tell us he stopped fighting. He pulled his toga over his head and let the blade strike. That final wound, delivered with surgical precision, pierced his heart. But the story doesn't end with Caesar's death. Brutus kept the dagger. He had it with him when he fled Rome, when he raised an army, when he faced Mark Antony at Philippi. And when that battle was lost, when all hope was gone, he ordered his own servant to hold the blade steady. Brutus ran onto the same dagger that killed Caesar. The weapon had claimed both master and betrayer. The blade disappeared after that night, lost to history. But its legacy lived on in a weapon that would kill more men than any sword ever forged. Dagger 3. The Carter, India's armor-piercing nightmare, 930 to 1330. Picture a dagger that doesn't have a handle. It is a handle. Two parallel bars grip your fist like brass knuckles, with a blade extending straight forward from your punch. This is the Carter, and when Mughal warriors first faced it in the 1500s, they thought they were fighting demons. Here's why it was unstoppable. Every other dagger in history relied on slashing or stabbing motions, using your arm's swing. The Carter used your entire body. When you punched with it, your shoulder, back, and hips drove the blade forward with the force of a battering ram. And the blade itself? That's where it gets terrifying. The Carter's blade was designed as a reinforced spike, sometimes triangular, sometimes double-edged, but always with one purpose: to punch through armor. Chain mail? The Carter's rigid design meant it didn't flex on impact. The links would shatter. Leather armor? The blade would slide through like it wasn't there. But wait, there's a version that's even deadlier. Some Katars had a hidden mechanism. A trigger in the handle would split the single blade into 3 scissor-like points after penetration. You'd stab your enemy once, pull the trigger, and the wound would triple in size from the inside. Pulling it out would cause catastrophic internal damage. Indian warriors called it Jamadar, the death holder. Because once it entered your body, you were already dead. You just didn't know it yet. The Carter became the signature weapon of Rajput warriors, who used them in ritualistic duels where honor demanded close combat. But it also became an assassin's tool. Its unique grip meant you could hide it along your forearm, covered by loose sleeves. Royal courts in India became paranoid. Anyone could be carrying one. But before moving on, I would like to ask you for something. If you like these documentaries and want to support me, please consider subscribing. It's free. Now, if you think a triple-bladed nightmare is dark, wait until you hear about the dagger that was never meant to kill quickly. Dagger 4. The Stiletto, the Elegant Executioner, 1330 to 1730. Renaissance Italy, 1500s. A time of art, poetry, Shakespeare, and Leonardo da Vinci. Also, the golden age of assassination. Into this world of silk and shadows came a blade so thin it looked like a needle. So precise that nobles wore them like jewelry. So deadly that cities banned them by name. This was the stiletto, and it turned murder into an art form. Here's what made it perfect for killing. The blade was as thin as a modern screwdriver, sometimes barely wider than a pencil. It had no cutting edge, just a needle-sharp point. And that was the genius. You couldn't slash with it, couldn't defend yourself. It had exactly one function: to slip between the gaps in armor and pierce vital organs. But the real horror was in how it was used. Knights in full-plate armor were considered invincible. Swords bounced off, arrows shattered. But the stiletto found the gaps: the armpit, the groin, the eye slit in a helmet, the joints in the knees. Italian assassins trained for years to know every vulnerable point in the human body. And here's the part that made it even more sinister. The wounds were so narrow they barely bled externally. You could stab someone in the heart with a stiletto, pull it out, and they'd walk for several seconds before collapsing. The bleeding was all internal. By the time they fell, the assassin would be gone. But wait, it gets darker. Because the stiletto's thin blade was perfect for one more thing: delivering poison. The wounds were so narrow that poison couldn't drain out. It stayed inside, spreading through the bloodstream. Assassins would dip their stilettos in toxins made from belladonna, hemlock, or even mercury compounds. The victim wouldn't die from the wound. They'd die hours later from the poison, and no one would know they'd been murdered. It would look like illness or natural causes. The stiletto changed European politics. Kings became obsessed with security. Paranoia spread through every court. Some rulers wore armor under their clothes at all times. Others employed food tasters, personal guards, even had their bedrooms checked nightly for hidden assassins with stilettos. The weapon became so feared that by the 1600s, carrying one in some Italian cities was punishable by death. But there's one more dagger, one final blade, that makes everything we've talked about look tame. This one? It didn't just kill people. It killed an entire way of life. Dagger 5, the Scottish dirk, the last blade of the clans, 1730 to 8 p.m. Scotland, 1746. The Highland clans have just fought their last battle. Culloden Moor is soaked in blood. The English have won, but not without seeing something that will haunt them forever. Scottish warriors charging into cannon fire with nothing but swords, shields, and a long, wicked blade strapped to their belts. This was the dirk, and it was more than a weapon. It was the soul of Scotland itself. The dirk wasn't just for fighting, it was part of daily life. Highlanders used it to eat, to cut rope, to defend their families. When a Scottish boy came of age, his father would give him a dirk. It meant you were a man now. You could protect your clan. But in battle, that's where the dirk became legend. Here's how Highlanders fought. They'd charge with their broadswords, smashing through enemy lines in a terrifying rush. But when the sword broke, and swords always broke, they'd drop it and draw the dirk. This blade was 12 to 20 inches long, single-edged, impossibly sharp. It could stab, slash, and parry. The blade was thick at the spine, tapering to a razor edge. Highlanders could punch through leather jerkins, even thin armor. And unlike fancy Renaissance daggers, the dirk was built for the mud and rain of Scotland. It never rusted, never broke. After Culloden, the English knew they hadn't just defeated an army. They'd fought a culture that would never surrender as long as they held their blades. So they made carrying a dirk illegal. They banned Highland dress, outlawed clan gatherings, even made speaking Gaelic a crime. For the first time in history, a weapon was so culturally powerful that banning it meant destroying an entire people's identity. Families buried their dirks in the hills, wrapped in oilcloth, hidden in stone walls. Some hid them for generations. Old men would pull them out decades later and weep, remembering when Scotland was free. The dirk became a symbol of resistance, of memory, of a lost world. But here's the final twist that brings everything full circle. The dirk never truly died. Scottish regiments in the British Army kept carrying them, officially as utility knives, but everyone knew what they really were. In both world wars, Scottish soldiers went into battle with dirks at their sides, carrying the spirit of their ancestors into modern warfare. Today, the dirk is still part of formal Highland dress. When a Scottish soldier is promoted, when a clan chief is honored, the dirk is there. It survived bans, wars, centuries of suppression. Because some weapons aren't just tools. They are pieces of the human story. They are the blood and tears and defiance of people who refused to be forgotten. 5 daggers. 5 turning points in history. If this journey through history's deadliest blades fascinated you, hit that subscribe button. There are more forgotten weapons, more lost stories, waiting to be uncovered.